Chapter 17. Amanda's heart raced as she faced the audience that was quickly gathering. A brown podium that held a microphone stood in front of her, and the media was setting up their own cameras and microphones in front of the stage. After the police had picked up Trevor and the few other boys who had made entries in the book, they had called Amanda, along with all the other women involved. The women had all met at the station. Amanda had been the luckiest. Some had no memory of the night. Some had gotten pregnant like Jordan. A few of those had had babies and put them up for adoption. Many others had had abortions. At the sight of so many haunted faces, Amanda had decided to speak up about the incident, to tell men that what had happened to them was not okay, and to tell women that there was help.
"Are you ready?"
Captain Griffith asked. Amanda glanced over at Jared and the rest of her friends from Students for Life who had come to support her and took a deep breath before nodding.
"Okay, let's get started."
He stood next to Amanda at the podium and addressed the crowd. He began by informing the crowd about the incident, then finding the black book and picking up the boys from the fraternity who had been involved.
"I'd like to introduce Amanda Adams. She was one of the latest victims, and she wanted to tell her story."
He stepped back, letting her have the mic. Swallowing the lump in her throat, she stepped forward. Hello. This isn't easy for me to say, but I felt the need to step forward for all the other women I met. I was lucky that my friends," she smiled at Emily and Jared, "saved me before the worst could happen. I know not all the other women were so lucky, and I wish I could go back in time to save them all. I want to warn other women to follow their gut. I had misgivings about the man who ended up attacking me, but I shrugged them off because I felt like I was finally getting noticed. Your instinct is your best defense, ladies. Trust it. Also, you should avoid drinking anything if you go to parties. I was drugged by a punch they were serving. The drug compromised my ability to move, but I was awake, watching everything that was happening. To the men watching, this is not okay to do to women. Many of these women conceived children due to their incidents. All of us feel violated. This must stop. Intimacy should never be forced and should certainly not be performed while women can't fight back. If you have been a victim of an incident like this, I urge you to report it. We must unite and fight back against these attacks, and the police need to take them seriously so we can change the culture surrounding this. Thank you." Amanda stepped back as Captain Griffith took over again. He reiterated the police department's desire to help women and to investigate these cases. Then he took a few questions from the crowd. When it was all over and the bright lights had been turned off, he turned and shook Amanda's hand.
"That took a lot of guts, and I thank you,"
he said, pumping her hand up and down. Captain Griffith was the quintessential Texas stereotype. He had a deep Southern drawl and always seemed to be sporting a cowboy hat on top of his salt and pepper hair. Amanda smiled at him before stepping down and walking over to Emily and Jared.
"You did great,"
Jared said, and Emily nodded her agreement before reaching in her pocket and pulling out her phone. It must have been on silent as it hadn't even rung. Her eyebrows knitted together as she read the message, and a frown stretched across her mouth. "What is it?" Amanda asked. "Nothing," she said, and placed the phone back in her pocket. "I'm going to go do something." As she hurried off, Amanda turned to Jared. What was that about? He shook his head as he watched her hurry away.
"I think it's about her roommate. She filled me in a little on the situation when we were in Mesquite, but I think she could definitely use prayer."
"Whatever I can do," Amanda agreed. "You guys have been so great to me."
"We're glad we met you,"
he said with a small smile, and Amanda knew he mainly meant he was glad to have met her. She knew he still wanted to date her, and she was pretty sure she wanted that too, but fear was holding her back.
"Can I walk you home?"
he asked, breaking up her internal dialogue. Amanda nodded and fell into step beside him. When they reached the dorm, he bowed and waved a farewell gesture before turning back toward his own dorm. Amanda appreciated the space, and she planned to use it to think on the situation and decide what she wanted to do. "Oh, I'm glad I caught you," a voice said on her right, as Amanda stepped up to the counter to grab her mail. Sarah rose from one of the foyer chairs and walked toward her. "Can we talk for a minute?" Surprised, Amanda nodded and led her upstairs to her room. Once inside, Sarah sat on the bed, folding her long legs beneath her. "You are probably wondering why I'm here," she said. "I'm happy to see you, but the thought had crossed my mind." Amanda smiled. Sarah had been the hardest to get to know of the Students for Life group, so Amanda was very curious as to the reason for the visit. She took a deep breath and bit her lip. Whatever was on her mind must be important. "It's about Jared." Amanda's forehead wrinkled in confusion. She had just left Jared. "Jared? What about Jared?" "I know he told you he knew about Caleb, and I know you're probably wondering why he didn't tell you. Well, that was my fault." "What do you mean?" Amanda asked, narrowing her eyes. "Do you remember the first day Caleb came to the office?" Sarah asked. Amanda nodded, and she continued. "Well, Jared came to me afterwards. He was shaking, angry, and afraid. I don't know if he ever told you, but we dated for a time, and while it didn't work out between us, we remained great friends. Last year, he met this girl, Nikki, and he really liked her. But one day, he saw Caleb and Nikki together. She told him they were just studying, but the next day, she broke up with him over a text." "That's awful," Amanda said. "But Jared already told me this." "Just wait," she interrupted. "Anyway, he never spoke with Nikki again, but a few months later we heard rumors that she had been attacked at a party. Of course, we also heard rumors that she was pregnant, that she ran away, and that some family member died and that's why she left. My point is that Jared didn't know for sure what had happened to Nikki until they found her name in that book. He wanted to tell you that day, but I told him not to because we didn't know for sure. I didn't know you well enough to know if you would believe him or just think he was trying to break you guys up. So I told him just to be there for you and to pray." She sucked in her breath and her voice trembled. "So it's not Jared's fault for not telling you. It's mine." She covered her face with her hands and her shoulders shook. For a moment, Amanda just watched her, unsure of what to say or do. She and Sarah weren't close friends, but Amanda liked her. Her counseling instincts kicked in, and she moved to sit beside her. "Sarah, it's okay. You didn't know either. How could you? He fooled us all." As the words left Amanda's mouth, she finally believed them, and a weight lifted from her shoulders. "But I've ruined it for you and Jared now. He cares for you so much." Her words came out in a muffled stream amid hitching sobs. "I don't hate Jared," Amanda said. "I was confused about how to feel, and I've been working on it. But you just sped up the process. It may still take me a while to recover fully, but I don't have any reason to be mad at him. Or at you," Amanda added quickly. "Really?" she asked and lifted her head. Her hawkish nose was wet with tears and her gray eyes glistened, ready to release another flood. "Really?" Amanda said. "I was already healing after the press conference today. What you told me clears up my remaining questions." "Will you give him a chance?" she asked. The intensity that radiated from her eyes only convinced Amanda more that Jared was one of the good ones. "I'd be crazy not to." Amanda woke, covered in sweat and shaking. Her eyes tore about the room, but she hadn't woken Jade. She still slumbered in her bed, back to Amanda. Her heart slowly returned to its normal pace. The nightmare of Caleb's attack receded from her mind, but that didn't ease the fear. This was the third nightmare she'd had this week. She needed closure. Amanda had hoped after the press conference that she would have it, but it hadn't stopped the nightmares. As if on cue, her phone began to ring. The number was unfamiliar, and she wondered if it was Caleb calling from somewhere. That had been a common fear with every unknown number, but then reality would kick in and she would ask herself why he would do that. She tapped the button and whispered a soft hello. Her surroundings froze as the words from the other end filled her ear, and her knuckles whitened from the grip on the phone. "I understand. Thank you for calling me." After ending the call, Amanda stared at the phone for a minute. Should she go? The idea filled her with fear, but the thought of closure held an appeal as well. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and prayed for guidance. Then she tapped out a quick message to Jared. She not only valued his opinion, but had other things to discuss with him as well. Half an hour later, a knock rapped at the door. Amanda opened it and stepped outside as Jade was still sleeping inside. Concern clouded Jared's green eyes. "Is everything okay?" She nodded, trying to decide which subject she wanted to broach first. "Let's go downstairs." Amanda led the way to one of the study carrels downstairs and grabbed 2 chairs. "Sarah came to visit me yesterday." He looked up in surprise, but waited for her to continue. "She told me how you wanted to tell me about Caleb, but she convinced you not to."
"I know I should have," he began, but Amanda held up her hand to stop him.
"When you first told me you knew he was dangerous, I couldn't understand how you wouldn't have told me your suspicions. But Sarah told me the whole story. I understand why she asked you to wait. It makes sense."
Amanda's cheeks heated, and she glanced down at her hands before continuing.
"I wish I had met you before I met Caleb, and I think in my heart I knew he wasn't the one I was supposed to be with. But anyway, I'm sure I'll still need some time to heal, but I was wondering if you still were interested in me."
The last part came out as barely more than a whisper, and Amanda forced her eyes to his face. A small grin played across his lips. "Of course I am," he said, grabbing her hands. "Watching you be so strong through all of this has just made me realize how much I admire you even more." Elation filled Amanda's heart.
"Good, then I need your help."
She filled him in on both the nightmare and the phone call. When she had finished, he leaned back and ran a hand through his hair. "Wow. Well, I'm glad they caught him. I'm sure that will help with your healing and your nightmares. But seeing him? Do you think it will be a good idea?"
"I have no idea," Amanda said with a shake of her head. "That's why I wanted your perspective."
"Let's pray about it. God will tell us the right thing to do." As he held her hands and began speaking, a feeling of peace and the knowledge of what to do flowed throughout her. When he finished, he squeezed her hands. "Did that help?" Amanda nodded. She knew what to do now. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Jared asked as they stood outside the jail. From the outside, it looked just like all the other brick buildings in this part of town, brown and nondescript. But he knew inside it would be very different, and he wasn't sure if Amanda was truly prepared for it.
"I'm not," she said with a slight chuckle. "But we are here. Turning away now makes no sense."
She took a deep breath and squared her shoulders, and Jared smiled at her strength. He opened the door and led the way inside, hoping this would indeed give her the relief she was seeking. The initial room was a small white area with a few chairs and a manned counter area shielded behind heavy glass. "Can I help you?" The woman, a hardened, tough-looking blonde with linebacker shoulders, asked.
"We're here to see Caleb West," Amanda said softly.
"IDs, please," the woman said, "and sign here." She pushed a logbook under the glass and waited for their IDs. As Amanda signed the logbook, the woman perused their IDs, looking from them to her computer screen and then back to Amanda and Jared. Her narrowed eyes stared intently as if she were trying to decipher if they were hiding anything. After inputting the information into her system, she pressed a buzzer that opened the door to another room. Jared's unease grew as they entered this second room. It was another small, colorless room where a male and female guard stood waiting to search visitors. After a quick pat-down, they were led into yet another room with several tables. "You can sit here," the male guard said, pointing to a table. "I'll bring Caleb in." "I'll stand back there." Jared pointed to the wall, "so you can say whatever you need to." He wanted to give her enough space to feel comfortable, but not so much that she felt he had abandoned her. Amanda smiled gratefully up at him before sitting down at one of the cold metal tables. Her hands splayed, then folded, then splayed again across the top of the table in an obvious nervous gesture. A few minutes later, Caleb appeared, clad in an orange jumpsuit. A sneer graced his face as he sat down across from her. "Did you finally decide you wanted it?" Jared bit his tongue and his desire to close the gap between them and strangle the man himself. Amanda shook her head, and though she might have been scared, her gaze remained fixed on his face.
"No, I wanted to ask you why. Why did you attack me? I was falling for you. I thought you were a good man."
"But you weren't giving me what I wanted," he said, with a sneer and a shrug. "Besides, it's all about the conquest for me. I chose you because you were so innocent. I like them innocent. It's more satisfying when you get what they refuse to give you." His cold eyes gleamed with malice, and Jared saw Amanda's body tense. Even Jared hadn't known how awful Caleb really was. How had he hidden this evil running rampant through him?
"But you could probably have any girl you wanted. Why do you feel the need to take it?"
"Because I can. It's about power. I had it, and you didn't." At his words, a smile broke out on Amanda's face. For a moment, she said nothing, and Jared watched Caleb shift in his seat.
"Well, now I have it, and you don't. I feel sorry for you, Caleb, but I'm not going to let you destroy my life. I'm going to pray for you and hope that one day you see how wrong you have been."
Caleb's mouth dropped open, but Amanda didn't give him the chance to say any more. She stood, motioned for Jared to follow, and walked out of the room, never looking back. "Do you feel better?" Jared asked as they left the jail. He knew the fresh air definitely felt better on his skin.
"I do."
Amanda smiled up at him.
"I was afraid it would bring back the fear, but I just felt sorry for him. He's obviously troubled. I am glad that he's going to go away for a while, but I'm not looking forward to the trial."
She shuddered.
"I know it's necessary, but I just want to be done with it, you know?"
Jared squeezed her hand in agreement. "How about some lunch to take your mind off it?"
"Sounds wonderful."
Amanda flashed a smile and reached for his hand.